Mark Littlewood's here, Director of Popular Conservatism UK. Mark, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Great to be with you.
Good to see you. I don't know if you were a Black Sabbath fan, but it's nice to celebrate. It's obviously a sad day today for the family, but it's nice to celebrate what used to be known as the Great British Eccentric, because I think Ozzy Osbourne definitely was one of those.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, talk about a life well lived, right?
Yeah.
And I think it was one of your viewers also saying, you know, quite a miracle that he made it to 76, where, you know, a real long life, really, for pop stars, certainly well lived.
Yes.
So, yeah, made quite an impression, not just through his music, but through his personality.
Yeah, absolutely. This from Sean in Bridlington. He says, I wasn't a fan of Ozzy's Black Sabbath, but his first 3 solo albums changed my life. His solo career saved his life and was at least as important as Black Sabbath. Blizzard of Oz was a work of genius. Yeah, I'm sure that's right. Unfortunately, the other blizzard that we're going to talk about this morning is the state of our economy, because Liam Halligan's going to be up shortly after you, who's going to tell me that we are in dire situations here. Rachel Reeves yesterday appearing before the Lord's Economic Affairs Committee, looking for all the world like she really didn't know what she was doing.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's actually pretty simple, I think, Mike, to work out what the problem is, but our politicians and the Labour government are struggling to deduce from that what the solution is. The truth of the matter is the government is spending far too much money. I mean, that's been true for a long period of time, that the former Conservative government over 14 years, in my view, was similarly fiscally incontinent. But we are continuing to spend far too much money. And if that happens, 2 things catch up with you. Either your debt starts to become unsustainable, and we're seeing that now. We're now spending more just on servicing our debt, not paying it off, just paying the interest on it, than we're spending on our education budget. And you get huge pressure for tax rises to meet the ravenous demands of the public sector. The problem with that, of course, is that's very, very bad for economic growth. If you put up taxes in the private sector, you can expect growth to flatline. And we're probably taxing the economy pretty much to the max now. So if you dial up tax rates, you might hope that you get more money in, but you'll probably flatten business activity, and you may even get less money coming into the exchequer. So the only solution, really, is you need to find some pretty dramatic ways to get spending down. Unfortunately, you know, Rachel Reeves put forward a rather modest package of measures, not a very well thought out package in my view, but nevertheless an attempt to reduce winter fuel allowance for some pensioners, ability to claim disability allowance and the rest of it, would have saved £5 billion, which is not a big amount of government expenditure, but they couldn't even get that through. So I think one of the reasons that she's looking so forlorn is it might be dawning on her somewhere in her subconsciousness about what needs to be done. We've got to get government spending down, but she knows she has not got a prayer of getting that, probably not even past her cabinet colleagues, let alone the Labour backbenchers. So talk about somebody caught between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, absolutely right. And let's have a look at her performance yesterday. This is her talking to the Lord's Economic Affairs Committee.
At the same time, we also have a challenging economic inheritance with high levels of tax as a share of GDP, historic high levels of government debt, and then also economic growth that really for the last 15 years has been very poor by historical standards because of the weak productivity growth that we've experienced in that period of time.
It just sounds like a kind of long apology, really, doesn't it?
Well, it does. And then again, just going back to my previous point, Mike, the bit that she didn't point out, which is just the truth of the situation, is that government spending is at an all-time high. Government spending just goes up and up inexorably. It's as if governments think that the way you make the books balance is, first of all, you give in to every demand in the public sector, and then you borrow or tax people to meet it. So she said economic growth is poor, that's true. Taxes are very high, that's true. Borrowing is very high, that's true. But all of that is basically a consequence of government spending being so enormously high. And its trajectory, if we don't correct this, is to go up and up and up and up and up, because we have an ageing population. That will mean more healthcare costs, more pension costs and the like. We haven't touched, the government government has not tucked money away to pay for our pensions. So all of that money needs to be found as we go along. So I think somewhere in the back of her mind, as I say, she knows that spending is the problem, but she didn't even enunciate that to a House of Lords Economic Committee, let alone take any serious actions on how we're going to get spending down. And frankly, politicians of all stripes have not been great about this. I'm trying to think of any political party who's put forward a plan to say, look, here's about 100 billion of savings that we think we could find, because it's probably something of that measure that we've got to find. And all of our politicians are ducking that big issue. So you get into that ghastly ratchet effect of tax rises, borrowing going up, and economic growth going down, or at least flatlining.
Right. And also, you know, the Times this morning with a story on the front page saying basically that Downing Street and the Prime Minister fear for a summer of riots because Britain is literally fraying at the edges. Downing Street officials have finally admitted, after listening to me probably for the best part of the last 6 or 7 months, they've finally, the penny has finally dropped. Angela Rayner saying that ministers need to acknowledge real concerns about rapid change, the migrant problem, which is not just a societal problem, which Nigel Farage has pointed out is really, really at the very heart of all of the problems in this country. It is a massive financial problem as well, because it's costing an absolute fortune. Billions and billions of pounds being spent, and people are getting to the point now where they're going to be, if they're told in you know, sort of the autumn of this year, I'm afraid we're going to have to come after you for some more taxes, I don't think they're going to be willing to pay them, because they see where the money's going, and they don't want it to go there.
Yeah, it has to be right, doesn't it, Mike? I mean, by and large, I think the Brits are a pretty welcoming, forgiving, patient bunch of folk.
Yeah.
But where Angela Rayner has only got one small element of the story here is saying that we've got to acknowledge people's concerns. You've got to go a lot further than that. You've actually got to address people's concerns. Yeah. You can't just acknowledge that they're irritated. You've got to get to the root cause of it. And I think what's tested the patience of a lot of ordinary Brits up and down the land, who I say tend to be pretty fair-minded and patient people, is that it now is starting to see that those who come into the country, often illegally, are getting better treatment than those who have lived and worked here for many, many years. And that's just not fair. And when people start to think that the system isn't just fraying at the edges a bit, but there's a fundamental unfairness in the system, and they're being picked on in order to favour some other group who don't, on the face of it, don't obviously deserve preferment, that, I think, is when people get pretty sour. And you've been mentioning this issue in Essex, Mike. Yeah. I mean, if our social fabric is fraying at the edges, it would be good to have a police force that knew how to handle things properly, rather than potentially exacerbating that even further. So I'm of the view, sadly, that the UK is a bit of a tinderbox at the moment.
Well, it really is. And I mean, this
to spark things off.
Yeah, and this story about the police, by the way, is going to have real resonance for the whole country. I mean, people are really angry about it this morning, more angry even than they were last week when we told them about the super injunction, which the last government took out to try and keep from the public that they were shipping in under cover of darkness, you know, thousands of thousands, tens of thousands of Afghan refugees. You know, because the fact that the police have now effectively admitted that they are now akin to left-wing activists puts them in a very bad position, because people will say, well, if you're now on one side rather than neutral, then you are not any longer the police as far as we're concerned. You're now a group of activists, and if it does kick off, we'll be taking you on.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it, Mike? And I think you were reading out just a little earlier the statement from Essex Police, that they sort of said something along the lines of, we have a duty to try and help free assembly and sort of get people to where they want to go.
Yes, I've heard of it.
Can you imagine if they applied this to the policing of football matches?
Yeah.
But a whole cohort of away fans turn up. They say, right, well, where are the home fans? We want to go to that pub and cause a bit of a ruckus. And the police say, oh, well, let's escort you there then.
Right.
You'd have huge amounts of football violence. The police shouldn't be trying to destroy our freedoms, but they should be conscious of the limits of free assembly. They've got to keep the peace. That's their principal aim, not actually freedom of expression. That's more an aim for the court. So I think they've got their duties and their responsibilities completely miswired.
Yeah.
Fortunately, nothing too bad has happened in Essex. But if that's the mindset of our police force up and down the country, then this tinderbox that I've been talking about is bound to spark off at some point because they're making it worse, not better.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's a shocking state of affairs. Very good to hear from you. Thanks very much indeed. And Mark Littlewood there, Director of Popular Conservatism UK.